Today, we're going to talk about a machine that, believe it or not, did more to change the world than pretty much any king or any army ever has. It's the story of how one single invention basically unleashed a tidal wave of information and took humanity from a world where knowledge was this rare, locked-away treasure to, well, to the one we live in today. And it all started with one guy and one truly revolutionary idea. Now, to really get a feel for just how big a deal this was, we've got to use our imagination for a minute. Let's just try to picture a world completely without something we see literally every single day, something so common we don't even think about it. Imagine you're a student. How do you learn anything? Well, you can't just go read a book. A teacher has to tell you every single word or show you every concept, one-on-one. There are no textbooks to look at later, nothing to study from.
Or what about this? No novels to get lost in, no paperbacks, no adventure stories sitting on your shelf just waiting to take you somewhere else.
And news? Forget about knowing what's happening on the other side of the world. You'd be lucky to hear what's going on in the next town over. Your entire world would be shrunk down to only what you could see and hear for yourself. I mean, this was the reality before our story starts. In this world, making just one copy of a book meant that a scribe, usually a monk, had to sit down and copy it by hand, word for word, letter for letter, a process that could take months, sometimes even years for just one book. And that right there brings us to the core problem of this whole era. Information just wasn't for everybody. It was a luxury item, something that only a tiny, select few could ever get their hands on. Now, what's really wild is how all of these points just connect together. Because books were so rare and so expensive, only the super wealthy and the church could actually own them. And because only they had books, what was the point for anyone else to learn how to read? It created this huge wall. Knowledge was basically locked away from almost everyone. But into this world of information scarcity steps our protagonist. And he's not a king, he's not a general, he's an inventor from a town in Germany, and he's got a vision.
This is Johannes Gutenberg, and his background, well, it was everything. He came from a family of goldsmiths and metalworkers, so he had this really unique set of skills. He understood metals, he knew how to make precise engravings, and he had that kind of inventor's brain that sees a huge bottleneck and just thinks, there's got to be a better way to do this.
And this right here perfectly shows his revolutionary idea. See, some printing did exist, stuff like woodblock printing, but it was just so clunky. You'd spend ages carving an entire page into a block of wood, and then, once you were done with it, that block was only good for that one page. Gutenberg's genius was to break it all down. Instead of a whole page, he thought, why not make individual, durable, reusable letters out of metal? This was it. This was movable type. So he's got the big idea. Now we're going to see how he turned that concept into the world's first real information machine. And this is where that metalworking background really came into play. The process itself was actually beautiful in its simplicity. So first, you arrange all the little metal letters, the type, into a frame to spell out everything you want in the page. Then you roll a special kind of oil-based ink over the letters. And finally, you use a big screw press, kind of like the ones they used for making wine, to press a sheet of paper down onto the ink. And boom, just like that, you have a perfect printed page. But, an invention is just an idea until you prove it works. Gutenberg needed a big project to show that his machine could not only work on a massive scale, but that it could also create something truly beautiful. And his proof of concept? The magnificent Gutenberg Bible. It was so perfectly printed that it was as good as the finest handwritten books, proving to the whole world the real power of his new tech. And with that proof out in the world, well, the floodgates just blew wide open. This wasn't just a new gadget. This was the trigger for a full-blown information revolution. The world was about to change, and fast. Just take a second and think about this number. Not thousands, millions. Within just 50 years of his invention, millions of books were out there circulating around Europe. We went from a few thousand precious manuscripts to an absolute ocean of printed text. It was something nobody could have even imagined. And you can see here just how quickly the technology spread. I mean, it was basically the 15th century version of going viral. It starts in one city, Mainz. Within 2 decades, it's in dozens of cities. And by the year 1500, over 250 cities had printing presses. The idea was out of the bag, and it was unstoppable. So what did all this actually do? Well, the impact was profound. For the very first time, education wasn't just for the rich. As books got cheaper, more and more people learned to read.
controversial ideas in science, religion, politics. You couldn't just snuff them out anymore. You could print thousands of copies and get them into people's hands before the authorities even knew it was happening. This wasn't just printing, it was the birth of mass communication.
And it is honestly not an exaggeration to say that Gutenberg's press was the engine behind some of the biggest intellectual and cultural movements in Western history. Think about it. The rapid spread of ancient texts helped fuel the Renaissance. Martin Luther's ideas spread all over Germany in a matter of weeks, sparking the Reformation. And scientists could finally share their work and debate it, knowing everyone was looking at the exact same words, which in turn ignited the scientific revolution. So that brings us to the legacy, because the world that Gutenberg remade with his press is, in many ways, the same world we live in today, even here in our digital age of pixels. To really get his legacy, just think about this. Johannes Gutenberg, he wasn't a king.
He never led an army into battle. He didn't have any traditional title or power.
But what his invention did was unleash something way more powerful. It democratized knowledge. It set ideas free from the tight grip of the church and the state. He basically gave ordinary people access to information, and that has changed the world more than any army ever could. And that really is the ultimate takeaway. Gutenberg's story is this amazing reminder that one really clever solution to a big problem can have consequences that ripple out for centuries. And it kind of leaves us with a question, right? If you had the skill and the vision, just like he did, what's a bottleneck in our world that you would try to fix?